Not even. He got to listen to a kitty and
There's
lots of
another.
interesting things going on. And of course, like the second you come on here, I have like a tickle in my throat. But so lovely to talk to you.
Me too.
I love the film. It made me just so happy, and I wish there was a show like that on now.
I
Truly,
know.
it's such an amazing. It, I just if you could briefly I of course know why because I've seen the film and I've read about you, but maybe to our viewers I'll talk a little bit about Soul and Mr. Soul, the documentary, and why this project was important to you and your connection to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a film called Mr. Soul, and it's literally about the first Black Tonight Show, which I like to say is like the greatest show you've never heard of. It's a
It's
show that was
true.
on PBS. I know, right? It was, even though it was on PBS, it was on from 1968 to 1973, and it literally raised the stakes and created freedom of expression, diversity, inclusion, all these words that are buzzwords right now, but it just happened really at a time of great turmoil in America, responding to the deaths of Malcolm, Medgar, Dr. Martin Luther King, and the uprising that took place and sort of the cultural shift that was happening post civil rights, post Jim Crow. Here comes this television show on national television that is for the first time depicting, this full Black experience. And you're seeing artists and activists, poets, dancers, and people from the community. You're also seeing household names that we know today, but for the first time. So Earth, Wind, and Fire for the first time, Al Green for the
Amazing.
first time,
Amazing.
Nikki Giovanni interviewing James Baldwin,
That
just like
I not to interrupt you, but that see James Baldwin, that
it's mind
it's
blowing.
incredible.
It's like, okay, time, just time out. This is too much.
It is.
I mean, we felt that way, when you consider that there were 130 episodes of this show, and yet nobody really knows about it. And each episode was an hour, but it kind of like predates Soul Train, which is kind of the national visual reference for our culture on television. To think that Soul came before Soul Train is really massive. And it's just really exciting to have a film like this that can really give everybody a point of access, whether it's the soul music that you love or really understanding the trajectory of our history and sort of a new reframing it around the Black arts movement. These are like hidden figures, and especially Ellis Haizlip is like this hidden figure.
I'm
And now,
obsessed. I'm
you know,
so sad that I didn't know about him. I'm so happy I know about him now.
yeah. And I know that that creates like a little bit of a melancholy feeling, like, oh, I wish I'd known sooner, but that's part of the discovery about it, and it's fun that even like the smartest people I know, the hippest, most woke, most,
Yeah,
culturally responsible people are blown away when they see it. They're like, how did this get by me?
it's really incredible because not only and I trust me, I love Soul Train, but this is a lot more than Soul
Oh, I
Train.
love Soul Train. Are you kidding
I
me?
love
I
it,
grew up.
but this show is so much more than that because it encompasses like the people kept saying it was ahead of its time. I think it still would be ahead of its time
Oh, for
completely because
sure.
not only were you giving voices to Black artists, but artists in mediums that you don't see ever,
Yeah.
which I love that stuff so much. Like that made me
Oh,
so
I know.
happy.
And
It,
and it's really important, I think, for young folks to see because we are so inundated with visuals right now. We have all these options, not to mention devices, to watch anything at any time. And the sort of culture of the immediacy that we're in is like the antithesis of what was happening, at during the birth of public television in 1968. And so it's just really remarkable to be able to look back at everything and say, oh, okay, that's where it started. We are all standing on the shoulders of giants in a way. We all have these pioneers to thank. And that's like the history lesson, but it's also a contemporary lesson.
and
And,
it's
and,
so
and
important.
yeah.
So important. And I love that you just said that the history, because I think one of my biggest frustrations is because I'm a movie nerd full and through, and I like so it always makes me really sad when I meet. people that are in entertainment, but sometimes it's not even that they don't know things, it's like there's not a want to know, and that really crushes me. But
Oh
you
my
have
God. Yeah.
like that, I can't. But it's so important to me to preserve the history, and you have to see where like why we get to do things now, we're able to, why mediums have evolved a certain way.
Yeah.
um and then you get, I mean, this was like a beautiful, like, see, I still can't believe I never heard of the show, seriously, because I'm like Stevie Wonder.
Okay, like Stevie Wonder.
And
Or
Ellis,
even, yeah,
he
Earth,
was
Wind, and Fire, Al
Earth, Wind,
Green,
and oh my God,
Arsenio Hall, 16 years old. That's the one that really gets me. And, I
that's
was,
nuts.
2 weeks ago, I got a call from Arsenio Hall, which just blew me away because we did try to get him in the film
I love
as
it.
as an interview, but he didn't have the opportunity and didn't have it on his schedule. And so, but we have these incredible clips of him, doing magic tricks at age
Which is
16.
that
And
I
we
love.
think about that okay, so Ellis Haizlip put him on television for the first time, and then look who he becomes, like this icon of his era,
Yeah.
in variety television and what that meant to us in the 90s.
Oh, that's like, I'm 41, so that's when I was growing up. So that is
Yeah.
such a big part of just television and pop culture and everything in the 90s.
Yeah.
Is amazing.
And it's really exciting too to think about how we have evolved in our pop culture and to look at these sort of earmarks in our culture and wonder, well, what's going to happen 50 years from now? Will we look back and say, holy cow, that was the beginning of the digital or streaming expansion, and we're doing something else now, or there's all these things that happen in like a cycle. And so it's so exciting that on like the 30th anniversary of his passing, Ellis Haizlip is finally getting a national audience,
Which
on
is
HBO Max, which is wild.
it's
And
I'm so happy about it. I just tickled
yeah,
about
but we did have a PBS broadcast too. I'm not, shout out to PBS, because to be able to come back to PBS and premiere on Independent Lens, which we did during Black History Month, that was really special too. That was a homecoming. That was also a shortened version of the film because we had a
Really?
limited
Oh,
time on the broadcast. We only had 83 minutes. So now that everyone gets to see the full film on HBO Max, it's like 104 minutes. It's 25 more minutes, basically.
and I wanted more after it, honestly.
I know.
I
It could
wanted
have
to
been a
ask
series.
you, because I know I was reading how they didn't archive every episode back then, I believe.
Right.
So
Painful.
how, yeah, because I think that the ones you were able to find, how do you go about choosing like which clip? Because it has to be, so that's why I'm like, hey, I want you to do it as part two, because I'm just selfish and want to watch them all. Or is there a place to watch the actual?
Yeah, there is a place. I'll start with that because that's important. There are a couple places where you can watch 24 original episodes that have been, up-res to high quality streaming quality, and that's on actually Amazon Prime. If you go on Amazon Prime, they have 24 original episodes. They call it season one. It's not actually season one sequentially. It's sort of like best of all the seasons, because season one, as you know, was way back in '68, and they were not archiving the show back then. And that brings up issues around, archiving, also ascribing value to Black shows. That's another rabbit hole conversation, but also to culture and what is worthy of being kept. But also this idea that it was a live show. And so the, the zeitgeist was really about who wants to see a live show again. If it happened once and it happened live, why would you show it again? That sort of concept evolved even for sports. Sports realized, holy cow, we have all of these vintage, classic games that now there's like a whole station.
There's a streaming station,
yes,
like there's like NBA classics, and there's
exactly, like somebody was like, hang on a second.
Yeah, because you think it kind of reminds me of like early, like when like early filmmaking, all the women filmmakers that there's just not films by them because no one kept them.
No one
just
kept
them. So I
so
love
this
that.
modern idea of archiving actually and preservation came about very late, and my mother ironically was part of that movement, and she moved to Los Angeles. My family moved to LA in 1989, and she had a position as the head of preservation at AFI, American Film Institute.
That's incredible.
Under Gene Furstenberg. But that was, remember, that was in 1989. And like the Hallmark show, not Hallmark Channel, but like the Hallmark moment, the Hallmark trademark? Well, the most important moment was the very first thing that they did was they restored Lawrence of Arabia frame by frame. So you might remember that, like that was the big film that came out. And it was such a big deal. It wasn't colorized, it was preserved frame by frame by frame. And what they were doing was preserving the moving image and making a catalog of it at AFI. That catalog went on to become IMDb. Like that was the beginning of IMDb, preserving every single image, whether it was a commercial, documentary, feature, whatever. So it's that database became, came out of the efforts at the American Film Institute and my mom in the Department of National Preservation Department. But so that's late. I mean, that's 89.
Oh my God, yeah.
What they were doing in 68 was, it was so new and so fresh. And there were a lot of shows that fell by the wayside, like American Dream Machine and a lot of PBS shows that weren't being archived, but particularly this idea that Soul was broadcasting live and they would do it live and record it and show it again on Sunday as the repeat. And then they would toss it or they would tape over it or they would throw it out to make room for more tapes that were literally, giant tapes that, and nobody had VCRs and this notion of preserving and archiving, and it just hadn't taken hold. But Ellis Haizlip knew that what he was doing was important. And thank God he found a way to, for example, preserve the very first musical performance, which was Patti LaBelle and the Bluebells. Literally friends of his that he called down to the show. And, Patricia Holt was his friend. And he said, Patty, can you come do the show? I don't know what it's going to be, but it would be great if you could be the first musical guest. And there she is with Nona Hendrix and Sarah Dash, AKA, Patti LaBelle and the Bluebells.
It's insane.
They kept that. They kept that one performance, and that's the only thing they have from the first show. That's the only thing they have from the first season, except for the episode with the Last Poets. And so we have that as well.
Which is incredible. And I'm so glad that they kept that.
Can you imagine now? Remember,
I can't, because it's so powerful. It's so amazing. And
it's the fifth show. They had only done 4 shows at that point, and they were doing that.
That's why I say, I love it so much, because you saw, if that show is on now, people would be saying it's way ahead of its time.
Yeah, and they would be calling in the station to say, I'd rather see Downton Abbey, probably,
which is horrible. But, I love Ellis too, because it shows them when he's talking to Farrakhan, and just the ability to sit poised, and talk to somebody that you complete opposite,
diametrically opposed. And that was a really, really difficult part of the film to create, because we knew, of course, that Farrakhan is vilified and has said some terrible things, and we were not trying to support the things that he said, and we were not trying to align with his homophobia and anti-Semitism, and we were not interested in sharing or illuminating any of that. What was interesting in was, can we focus on Ellis's bravery, since this is really his story, and can we show this clip to really illustrate something he did that was very brave, which is to talk about homosexuality. I don't even think that word was used on television, to be honest with you. I could be wrong, but imagine that. So soon after Stonewall, Soul actually came on before Stonewall by about a year. And so here you have an openly queer, Black man caping hard for the culture, but at the same time not being accepted 100% by the culture for issues around homophobia in our own community. But he's challenging Farrakhan as if to say, I see you, brother. I recognize you, and I recognize how you're helping the community and incarcerating people to find their justice and their righteousness.
Yeah.
But let's talk about how you're excluding people who are, same gender loving men and women and non-binary folks. And the fact that he can actually say that is mind blowing. He's not vilifying him at the same time. So what it's illustrating is this nuance, this sort of power dance, and this, it shows the complexity of Black lives and the dissent even within the family
Of course,
and the
yeah.
diaspora. And that was important to show too, that he could sit in his truth as a proud out gay man and challenge, you know, an openly homophobic Black leader, but also say, I hear you, and I'm going to give you a platform to say it.
Which,
That you don't usually see that kind of
no, and that's such a
you
good
know,
the message for everybody. Just the way he did it so graciously,
mm,
eloquently, not vilifying him, but be.
right.
I mean, I
It's
think
like
it's
saying, you know, it's like game recognizes game.
yeah,
You know, like
yeah.
I see you, brother, but you're on my show, and you're gonna have to answer to me. But at the same time, I'm gonna let you speak because I'm not going to limit you. I'm not going to censor you. You know, we're here to provide all the voices of the
Yeah.
Black experience, even the ones we don't agree with. So that's really radical and somewhat
It's
revolutionary, even now, I
oh,
think.
I think
We're so
sometimes
polarized, we barely listen to each other if we have
that's
different
what I
opinions.
loved about it, because I feel like now people will not really, even in their own communities, whatever, they maybe they'll never kind of have that conversation within their own communities, and they won't have conversation. They'll just dismiss or be nasty to someone, and that's not going to fix anything ever. um so to see that was really beautiful to me, and it was I really think something people should strive for, be it always.
Yeah,
It's a good lesson, I think, especially now.
it was risky, I will tell you. And even when we were developing the film, and the film took 10 years to make because it was all made by grants and having to raise money, wanting to have it publicly funded, like Soul was publicly funded, for the same provenance for the show and the film.
Oh, I love that.
And people told me, you know, you really shouldn't have fair partner, you know,
I'm so
you're
glad
going
we
to
did.
lose this audience and that audience, and you're going to lose this funding and that funding. And I listened, just as Ellis Haizlip would listen, but I also had to say, so are you asking me 50 years later to censor a show that wasn't censored? You know, what, that's a whole nother can of worms. Like, to, is that our job? Can we frame it in a contemporary way that will allow many sides of the argument to be illuminated? But should we actually be censoring something that he didn't censor? And we decided not to.
I because I
But
think
we
it's
really wanted to, you know, weave it into the story in a way that was not Trojan horsing a certain agenda, but really showing
and it didn't feel that way at all.
nuances
I'm
and
so
complexity.
glad that you included that. I think it's such an important part of the film,
Mhm.
and like I said, it's just something that people really should reflect on today.
Yeah.
Really, truly, and I love. I think it was so well done, specifically that part. I'm so glad that you're right. How could you censor a show that wasn't allowing it to be like, it would kind of
Yeah.
kill the spirit of it in a way, you know?
It was a big not a conflict, but it was it was challenging because we really had to think long and hard. You know, we didn't want to alienate anybody.
Yeah.
And we certainly didn't want to alienate a contemporary audience with something that would be considered, you know, somewhat controversial. But then we thought, but the whole show was controversial.
Absolutely.
So literally, who are we to kind of, you know, rewrite history? Like, that's not our job. We're just trying to situate it in a story that will kind of, you know, a reverse Russian doll where it peels back the layers to from macro to micro, and you really understand based on what you bring to the story as a viewer, what matters to you, and hopefully it can illuminate another way of looking at it. And one thing we really wanted to do, and ironically, this scene really illustrated that, was to make Ellis Haizlip a hero. And so often, you know, in Black queer narratives and queer narratives from bygone eras, there's like a melancholy or a tragic, you know, sort of like either the tragic mulatto or the tragic, you know, queer person. And we're like, no, that wasn't his truth. We want him to be a hero in his own story. And how do we empower him, and so that he could walk in his truth the way he would, even though he didn't wear his, gender preferences on his sleeve at the time, because in certain places being queer was illegal, and also it was hard enough to be a Black man, let alone a Black gay man, on the heels of the civil rights movement. So, all of these nuances were brought into play in the storytelling so that we could be really honest, and imbue the story with that integrity, but also with love.
You could tell it's made with love, and there's love that comes through because there's love through him that you feel, and I think it's a beautiful tribute to him and somebody that should be known way more. And I'm so glad this film exists because I'm excited to tell people about it. I'm very excited to know about him. I feel inspired by him. He was an amazing human being, and I adore and admire sincerely every, like, just the courage he had to. It was like, no, this is. I was really blown away by it. I just thought it's so beautiful, and I'm so excited to that it's even on a bigger audience now.
Yeah.
And that I know about it because I have a big mouth, and I tell my friends and family to watch it. It's incredible. I feel so silly for not knowing about it, but I'm so glad I did.
But it's okay, because then that gets to be your discovery as well.
You're right.
And we all need that, and we need to know that, especially at this moment when we're sort of having a whole reckoning and kind of reimagining and recalibrating this story of America, and everybody's participation in it instead of just a few.
Yes.
We really kind of have to look back and re-excavate and re-examine and explore, or whatever, however you want to use the terms. Some people say, what is the word? I can't think of it, but it's sort of like examine.
I'll say that.
I can't remember, but there's this idea of really not rewriting history, but re-examining our place in history.
Yeah.
And we all have this history, we all have the same history, but we've been taught different ways of looking at it. And I think now, with critical race theory, of course, and just this idea of honestly speaking to everybody's participation and not erasing certain people from the narrative, that's a chance for all of us to kind of revisit and examine, how we came together as a nation, and give due to where due hasn't been given, and that can help us illuminate our path going forward. That's the exciting thing. It seems like we're on this, like this door is open somehow, we have to run through it, because I don't know how long it's gonna stay.
Well, I'm excited too, because I just think of like young artists now that he'll inspire, and what those people will bring forth.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why we ended the film the way we did, because we're like, look at on the shoulders on which they stand. Look at the Black seeds that keep on growing. We may not know it, but we're carrying forth this legacy. And thanks to the people who paved the way for us.
You worked with Sam Pollard on this film?
Yeah. He started out, originally he was going to be our editor. And then we hired his son to be our editor, Jason.
I know Jason. I went to NYU with Jason. That's what.
Then Jason had twins and got a little busy. And so we were like, oh, he has to have twins. Okay. So next, plan B. And then really Sam was doing much more producing and more directing. And so he said, let me stay in like a producing, directing role and help you guys out that way. And he was really more like a mentor in a way, because he really came up at the same time, and he was actually trained at Channel 13 at the same time that Ellis was there.
He's an incredible. So I was so happy to see his name. It was like, because he's an incredible human being, I think.
So he really is. What a spectacular filmmaker. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing.
Like, so I was so happy. I was like, well, it makes sense that, great people are attracted to great projects.
Sure that we surrounded ourselves with the right team that would understand this. And, from Eyes on the Prize folks to contemporary folks, like there's so many stakeholders in the story, and different phases of the story, different parts of history, and the historians and the people who lived it. So we just wanted to make sure we honored everybody equally. And we even set up what we call a school that was based on Henry Hampton's school that he set up for Eyes on the Prize, to kind of create like a think tank of writers and historians and a board of academic advisors, to have this sort of academic spine. So we really understood the story we were telling, because of the historical significance and
Yeah.
lining up all the facts. It's a very factual story, but it's also buffered by, so much artistry that aligns with. So we were really telling three stories all at once. And when you asked me earlier, how did you decide
Yeah.
what not to put in? It's like our model was almost like a puzzle, because we had three different storylines. The story of Soul from 68 to 73, which is 130 episodes. That's easy. You can kind of pick out the highlights, the best parts. Then we had the biography. So that's the biography of the show. Then the biography of the man is Ellis Haizlip, but we're just going to drop in on 68 to 73 and really focus a little before, a little after. And then you had so you had the biography of the show, biography of the man. The third element is the zeitgeist, like what was happening in America that would allow for a show like Soul to even exist in the first place. And so then we literally cut three different films.
You're right.
Three different films, about an hour to an hour and a half long each, to understand the full scope, the archival, the Soul, Ellis Haizlip.
And you make it work cohesively.
And then we collapsed all three stories into one and tried to figure out the most salient moments in each one, and they all had to line up. So in a sense, everything had to earn its way into the film. It had to answer to all three masters. So it had to answer, like, does it tell us something about Ellis? Does it speak to the times? And is it something that can relate to the actual archive from Soul? So when things, using that kind of roadmap, we had to be really economic with our storytelling. With only an hour and a half to tell the story, every point had to answer all three. And then we use like the unifying graphic aesthetic of Ellis Haizlip vignettes, so that you're led through the story by him, his own words, and those are voiced by the amazing Blair Underwood. And then the sonic bed, the music, and the soundtrack by Robert Glasper. So there's a lot of elements, but we had to have like literally a scientific roadmap for that to work. So anything that didn't earn its way into the film, we couldn't use it, even though we wanted to use like a great Curtis Mayfield clip. Like, I couldn't interview Curtis Mayfield, or I didn't have the zeitgeist for Curtis, or maybe I didn't have the right clip. So if it didn't meet all three criteria, it couldn't get in there, which is heartbreaking. Again, it was Sophie's choice for me, deciding, having to decide. Yeah. And the team said, you can't have two Al Green songs. And I was like, why not? How do you expect me to choose between two Al Green songs? And don't make me choose between Al Green and Stevie Wonder. That's going to be a problem.
No. I'm like, no.
That's a problem here, So it was hard, but we had to put our personal stuff aside, and personal stuff for me, as Ellis is my uncle, right? So, and try not to, make it what's the word? Hagiography. I was really very, very conscientious.
It never feels that way. It never feels that way at all. It's very, and I knew you're these because I've read about you, but watching it, you would not think, okay, yes, this is somebody related.
We didn't want it to be just a Valentine to my uncle. It's not. It's a bigger story, right? It's actually not even my story, even though it is my story through him. It was such a big story with so many cultural and historical touchstones, and so many stakeholders to get their story right was the important thing. Knowing that many of our great African-American icons in the 20th century and now the 21st century are leaving us, right? And I was worried, who's going to tell their stories if they can't? We have to make sure we get a little bit of everybody, so that we are honoring that source before it's lost to us.
I love documentary filming because I feel like there are these things that I feel like obligated to capture. Absolutely. The next generation, and thank God you did this, because I think it's so much bigger than I could articulate the film. But I really like, I'm speechless because, you know, I watched it earlier. I was really blown away and I can't wait to watch it again. Um, it's special. It's so special. And it just, I'm glad to have this here now
Yeah.
forever.
I think it's a great timing now. I think we've had so much, cultural PTSD after last summer, and we've all been through something in one way or another. And with COVID and the struggles, like it's okay to find joy, even in this immense time of change and loss and grief. It's almost like we need the joy to buoy us and to go forward culturally, separately. We've all been in our little silos. And so this is kind of it's a love letter to Black culture, but it's an inclusive love letter.
It's super
Everybody can enjoy it. And we literally wanted it to be that way because we know that that's what Ellis wanted.
Yeah.
What better time to remind ourselves of our greatness so that we can, create more.
He's great because he just reminds me of, is that I just feel like, you know, the right thing's not always the popular thing, but you just have to not be afraid and do it. And that's what he makes me feel like that I
Right.
kind of see in him, because in all like practicality, that show shouldn't have been on in that, like, really
At all.
at all. It's like a miracle that it was on, and he did it, and it's amazing, and it's incredible. I still have shivers like from seeing James Baldwin like that.
Okay, that is like the high water mark for me. And also because they shot it in London and it
Yeah.
was 2 hours long. And just the idea that you get, I mean, granted, we were so excited to see I'm Not Your Negro, that wonderful documentary by Raoul Peck. And up until that point, we really didn't get to see James Baldwin. We all have his words on the page, but when you see him sitting down with like a young, hungry, someone who looks up to him, who's also now become a Black literary icon, but really was an up and coming poet at the time. And you see this interaction with them that is so, at times it's performative because they're talking about Black love and Black couples. And, we know their sexualities are different. But at this other times they're speaking for all of us. Like, and when he says a cop is a cop, if I get pulled over by a white cop, one of us is going to be dead. Is that 1971 or is that 2021? It's chilling.
It is.
And I don't think they set out to be like a prophetic moment at all. I think they sat down to have a real conversation. Baldwin was actually having conversations like that with other intellectuals and literary icons like Margaret Mead, but that was the first one he'd done with like a Black literary up and coming icon.
I love the dynamic between them two
and the fact that you can like see her thinking, and you see her, you see thoughts dawning on her in her face.
Absolutely.
And it's like you're there. And I honestly could have made a whole film out of that.
No, I think you were absolutely
like, can we just put a little more in there, please? My editor's like, you've got a lot in there already.
That could be like
it's like the highlight of the whole series.
I will watch it. I swear, because that's there's all these. I mean, the film is special in itself, and then like it's incredible.
And I had to keep reminding myself, this is the gateway drug. This is the gateway drug. The film is a gateway drug into the series, and then people can discover the series on their own. And then hopefully with everybody's, just rediscovery and interest, maybe we can get the series, re-aired or rebroadcast, or even available to purchase or available to stream.
I would love.
I think that would be appropriate because he made it for the people. It is up on a paywall. You can, if you're a member of PBS Passport or a member of PBS, you can watch it. But it's also for free on.
You said Amazon had.
Amazon if you're a member, yeah. And then Shout Factory if you're for free, you can watch it. shoutfactorytv.com/series/soul, I believe, will get you there. And then Tubi is also playing some. TUBI.
Yeah, Tubi. I know Tubi.
Tubi, and then there's Pluto as well. Pluto has some episodes, so they're all going to be the same. And then there's some bootleg stuff on YouTube. I did not put it there, I swear, on my
Go look it up.
I license
I'm like curious.
agreements and contracts, and I did not upload it, but there are some things on there, and it's just great. You know, it's great to discover. But I really hope that there can be either a reboot or a rebroadcast,
I would love.
because you know it was made for the people by the people, and I really think it belongs for the people, and that's why that was the initial reason I made the film. It's like, you guys are sitting on a gold mine. I don't know if
That,
you know.
I've,
It's in the vaults for 45 years. It's a
that's,
gold mine. It's a time capsule. It's
it,
like a veritable Whitman sampler of like Black excellence, you know. It needs to be seen. It shouldn't be behind a paywall, and it shouldn't be, you know, only accessible.
like all like I was just thinking of like the spoken word, the poetry, the dance. Like you just see like the
God, yeah.
passion, and like how could that not be seen? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, when you look at that scope of 130 episodes, 130 hours, it's a remarkable achievement, even though it was canceled.
Uh,
And
it's
it's
incredible.
remarkable that that was free. And that's what, you
Yeah.
know, Ellis Haizlip put the public in public broadcasting.
Really? Yeah.
I really feel he did. And he brought a Black audience and a Black and brown audience, and a, you know, queer, and, you know, he was queering television even when people weren't aware that's what he was doing, just by his very presence and being a queer icon after the
Absolutely.
fact, you know. And so all of that really amounts to a real landmark. So I'm glad that the film kind of sneaks up on you,
It definitely does.
not trying to, you know, create like this is really important, but when
No,
you see it,
it's
you
beautiful.
see how it fits into the world, and that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, and just I was very excited to talk to you. I've enjoyed this very much. But I'm so it really is. It's a beautiful film, and you could feel love through it, and I think it's inspiring. And I just hope, yeah, I now it's out to a wider audience, and I'm excited to see what more comes of it. Yeah,
Me too.
yes, it is. It's still ahead of its time. It still is.
I think so
Still
too,
is.
but I'm
It
so
really
glad
is.
now to think that Soul is finally getting a national audience, and on the anniversary of his, well, 30th anniversary of his passing, that he's now getting a national audience is for Soul. It's just so thrilling. It's kind of bittersweet, but
Yeah,
it's great. And I'm so happy that it's premiering on HBO Max. They're doing some really dynamic programming right now. And
I love it.
I'm excited, and it's great to be a part of this new programming, which seems to be all about, you know, diverse audiences and stories, and
Yeah.
being a part of this new change where they are showing both, you know, films that are appearing in theaters and in streaming. This, they call it the big idea, I think. I know that
Yeah, we
that's
have it.
shaken up the art scene
Oh,
quite a
absolutely.
bit, and a little challenging for the theaters, but you know, I think it is really important
That everybody's able to.
everybody's able to make this pivot right now, and to see where that lands us, and to have the film premiering now in the middle of that is really, really exciting.
Oh, Melissa, thank you so much.
Thank you so
I thank you for fucking introducing me to who your uncle is, because even his voice is very soothing. I think I was like, I love the sound of his voice. It's a great, just like
What was that voice? Some kind of wacky, I don't,
I love it.
always wondered. Like, that's probably what I would ask him today if someone said, what question do you have? I was like, what was that voice,
I
Ellen?
love it. I
Kind
love
of
it. It's like
like
very
English, and kind of like down south, but twangy, a little queer, and like, you know, but very authoritative, but also very relaxed and kind of unassuming. And at the same time, he's hurling bullets, you know.
totally, and it's very unique to him, which I love.
Very unique to him.
Very
It's
unique to him.
very accessible, but at the same time, a little bit, you know, intellectual and thoughtful.
That's what I like. There is definitely a level of academia and
Yeah,
intellect, everything, but it never
but it's very much in the
yeah, or
streets
make
at
it,
the same
yeah,
time. You know,
yeah.
and there's one scene where he's introducing, I think, Amiri Baraka, and but no, he's talking about the different kinds of revolutionaries, the different ways you could protest. And he was introducing an episode called The Roots of Black Protest. And he's talking about the various ways that people respond in difficult times, and in uprisings. And even in the way he's addressing the audience, it's very laid back, but it's very direct and very challenging. But he's also wearing a blouse. So
I love his style. I love his choice of clothing. I have to. I loved it. I think
it's literally a blouse.
I what I think.
Go ahead, Ellis. I see you.
I love it. I love it.
He's so unassuming and so, unapologetically Black and queer, but he's also letting you know that something very important is happening and that we're all part of it. The revolution is being televised.
Thank you so much. This has been lovely. You. This is like probably months now. But truly amazing film, and I'm just excited to see where else it go. And amazing family, not just your uncle, your mother. Thank you for your mother for preserving. That's so.
Yeah, pretty crazy. I don't even really think about that, but it's definitely it's definitely in the blood somehow.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that kind of stuff I think is some of the most, as an artist, some of the most important things you could do, honestly, because you'll be gone.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
If we're gone tomorrow, we still have preserved today.
Yep.
Well, thank you. And on that note, having me.
Thank you.